Well, Austin, welcome to the show. Thanks for being
Thank you.
here.
Great to be here, Sean.
Yeah.
Good to be here.
Before we jump into all of the cool things you're up to, we like to start out each interview with kind of a baseline because there's this huge disconnect, as you know, between Web3 people and not Web3 people because it's easy to just talk about all the words, all the NFTs and DeFi, and there's just too many things that are insanely complex. And I feel like it's on us to explain things easier and better for everyone to understand. And that's kind of our goal here, is to create those light bulb moments in our listeners' minds where they can see little glimpses of the Web3 future. That's a good place to start, I think. So first question is, how do you define Web3?
One of my favorite questions. I think at its most simple, I like to say, well, let's look at what was Web 2 first. What revolution did that sort of spark? And I think the answer is one word: social, right? It allowed us to gather in mass amounts of social groups and decide, hey, I like that kind of thing. I'm going to put my support behind it. So then what is Web 3? It definitely carries over the social. It's combining that Web 2 social movement, but now with financial. So I like to say that Web 3 is community-based economics, or it's that social plus financial. So I don't just go like something. I'm now able to put my own capital behind it. And of course, that's more empowering for whatever movement, whatever project, whatever sort of new endeavor is trying to sort of come out of the works. We're now able to just say, hey, I don't just like that thing, but I actually want to support that with my capital, and that unlocks so much potential, so much innovation in the market.
Is there an easy metaphor that you find yourself using a lot to explain Web3, maybe to your parents or to your grandparents?
Yeah. I mean, I like to use the word smart contracts. And so one of my favorite books I highly recommend reading is Blockchain Revolution by the Tapscotts. If you haven't read it, please go do it. And one of my favorite pieces of the book is I think it's the introduction. They talk about how Nick Szabo wrote back in the 90s about the trust protocol. And when I think about that from my sort of legal background, contracts were that sort of medium of exchange, that if I was going to buy your headphones right now, we would write a contract to make sure that thing happened, right? Because you don't trust me, I don't trust you, I like you, but I don't fully trust you to give me $10 for the headphones, right? So we would write these things down. But over time, even though that was very simple at the beginning, and the thing that we're taught first day in contracts class is the best contract is one page, and I don't think I've seen a one-page contract ever. So at the end of the day, those have become so complex that it actually has inhibited people from engaging in transactions with one another. And so then we had the advent of the internet. And it's like, well, now I can be anonymous. I could be AW324 and you could be SC123. And I really don't trust you now because I have no clue if you're going to send me that $10 for the headphones, right? So it's like, how do we now facilitate an intermediary that is decentralized, that is automated, so that we don't have to go hire a lawyer, hire a banker, hire an accountant, because that just made that transaction so much more complicated when I just want your headphones, right? And so what I think is cool is that blockchain, especially with the rise of smart contracts off of Ethereum and further chains, is now we can do things like that automatically. And at the end of the day, it really is, we're just cutting out intermediaries to more seamlessly, efficiently, quickly, and easily effectuate transactions amongst one another. And that's everything. Like, you drive your car, it's probably a lease or a purchase that you did, and that was a contract at the start, right? Your apartment, probably a lease, that was a contract. You buy something on Amazon, there are contracts involved. Our lives are actually based off contracts, and blockchain is now giving us the ability to automate that and remove out a lot of the extra costs, because it's just you and me now. Hey, I'm going to send you the $10. You're going to give me the headphones. Boom, we're done, right? So the new trust protocol is the blockchain.
Yep, love it. Second is, how do you define an NFT?
Non-fungible token. Next question. NFT. I think that in my head, the coolest thing about an NFT is that at its core it is that smart contract with a face. So what I love about it is, you could look at Coachella, for example. They did NFT tickets, right? Or you could look at Bored Apes. It's an NFT art piece. Or you could look like what we're doing. It's an NFT share in a film or TV project at Kino. All of those things underlying it, again, goes back to, it's a contract. It is, I am buying a certain thing and I have the rights to attend an event. I have the right to the ownership of this art, or I have the right to a percentage of future profits in this film or TV show. But what's cool about an NFT is it's not just an old paper contract that sits in your filing cabinet. It has a face to it. It feels tangible, even though it's digital, and it's transferable. You can send it across the internet, and it's, you can trust that it is what it is because it's on the blockchain on a transparent ledger. So at the end of the day, I think that what an NFT is it is a smart contract that has that tangible digital representation that we can pass around. I can even just brag that I own it by putting it as my profile picture on Twitter, right? We can do so many more things with it than just saying, oh yeah, I bought that thing and I got an email from Eventbrite,
Mm-hmm.
or I have a stock purchase agreement in my email, or, whatever other thing gives us the ability to have more digital interactions that we're doing.
So you have a background in law. I believe you have a law degree. How did you get into Web3? What was that aha moment, that rabbit hole journey that you went on?
Yeah, definitely. And caveat, I'm actually in my last year of law school at
Oh,
USC Law
nice.
right now. So I'm in the thick of
Cool.
it, which is really cool because I went from my first year of law school, my professors mocking me for even bringing up the word blockchain, to my second year of law school. All they would do is use that as examples for legal problems. I'm like, oh, now you think this is cool, which excited me because they're seeing that it is a real technology that can facilitate what I actually think is more efficient legal work. But anyway, backtrack. Uh, when I was growing up, I had a very different path. I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to be in film and TV. I did everything from acting lessons to voice lessons to dancing. I learned how to tap dance. That's not coming useful anytime, but that was my path, right? And then as a kid, my family actually faced some pretty tough legal problems that put me on my own when I was in college. My dad called me and said, "Hey, kid, you're on your own. Figure it out." And I remember this visceral feeling of, why didn't the lawyers do more? Like I didn't do anything wrong, and now I'm on my own, and I feel like there were people that were supposed to defend us, but what did they do? And so I decided to pivot. I attended Miami University. I got my degree in political science and business legal studies, and I was like, law, like that's my thing. I can protect others. I can defend myself. I can enact change through this legal space. And ironically, I also was interested in this business law space of finance, and I had gotten a little bit into crypto and a little bit into Bitcoin and Ethereum when it first got out. But back then, I really did just think it was currencies, and I thought it might be cool to own a couple of these. That was my first taste of it. Kind of went away. I took a detour, got my master's degree at the London School of Economics, and it was while I was there that I fell in love with entrepreneurship. And I actually joined their entrepreneurship program, launched my first startup, got funding, and launched, an ed tech gig app. And it was through that experience that I fell in love with this idea of building. So I already had this lingering sense of, I like crypto, I like what this is doing, it's new, I'm not really sure about it. And then I fell in love with building, but I still in the back of my mind, like law is where I'm going, that's my long-term path. And so I ended up going to USC for law school. And in my first year that I was there, I got deep into crypto trading. This was the middle of the pandemic, and I feel like my spare time was just literally me in Discords and Telegrams being like, what's all this new stuff happening? What's the Binance Smart Chain? What are all these new projects that are popping up literally every second of the day? It's like, this is way different than when I first got into it. And I fell in love with all these communities. I think that's the biggest thing. That was my aha moment, was when I discovered that these aren't just little coins or tokens or whatever you want to call them that exist out there. There are entire communities around each of these projects that are in and of themselves often little movements, And so then I ended up going to found a charity forward project called Elongate with a couple other guys on Discord and Telegram, and we ended up donating millions of dollars to charity. And I was like, wow, this is epic. Like, we are able to aggregate thousands, hundreds of thousands. We have over 500,000 holders at one point, to do some good in the world via a financial mechanism. And the finance space is not well known for like making the world a better place. So it was that moment for me that I was like, there is this aspect of community that's so powerful. And then fast forward, I ended up founding Kino, and now we're in film and TV, and we're populating communities around individual projects that we can empower artists and protect their rights. But it was really that particular community moment. It was just being deep in the Discords and the Telegrams and going, wow, all these people care, and they are, they have financial means, they have financial resources. It might not be $1 billion hedge fund, it might not be $1 billion VC fund, but that $100 from that one guy in my community who cares a lot about this one charity project, I think that actually went a lot further than some of the big guys in traditional finance.
Mm-hmm. So back in the pandemic, Elon tweeted, "If there's ever a scandal about me, call it Elon Gate."
Yep.
Why did you decide to do something with that? Like, why were you and your friends like, let's mint a coin and create a charity coin
Yeah.
here?
Yeah. I mean, I can't take credit for the original idea. It was honestly a joke to start. It was, hey, this would be hilarious. It's a meme. Meme coins are becoming popular, And it was this whole, maybe this will go somewhere. And if it goes somewhere, maybe we could do some cool things with it. And we had this purpose of, if it goes somewhere, we could charge this 10% fee, half of which goes to charity, half of which goes to our tech development. And we had no clue that this would take off. We thought, no chance, never going to happen, as a meme coin does. And it did. And so really at the end of the day, it was just a shot in the dark. Maybe somebody will laugh. Maybe we'll be able to donate a couple $100. And then fast forward 6 months later, I had written contracts for donating over $4 million to some amazing charitable causes.
Wow. That's amazing. How big was the team that launched it?
So we started with, I mean, it's hard to say too in the Discord days, because like there's a bunch of people that were volunteering, people at varying levels. We started at 5 to 10, and then we grew to over 50. And that was just the core team. We had over 100 volunteers managing all of our different channels.
Well, yeah, talk about that, because I mean, that's a key kind of like this weird thing that Web3 does is you build things with just random people in Discords. Yeah. So like, tell us if you can, like more specifically, how this started. Like, did somebody say, hey, Elon tweeted this thing, let's start a coin, and then a bunch of you said, I'm in, let's do something? Or tell us about how that started.
Yeah. I mean, it really did start as sort of, saw the tweet. Some guy in one of our channels was like, hey, this is a great idea. I know how to code Solidity. We could create some further community channels around this. Let's start hyping up people. Let's start inviting our friends. Let's start chatting about it. Let's start posting our own memes and just having some fun and see where it goes. And so practically speaking, it was literally idea. It was coding. It was creation of some channels, and it was, let's just hype each other up all day long and have a whole lot of fun. And then let's figure out the business part. So it's very different from your traditional startup world where it's, I'm going to go put a, corporation in place, and I'm going to set up my business model. I'm going to go pitch VCs. It was literally, let's code it and see what happens. And here we are. Yeah,
that's amazing. How long were you involved with Elongate? Like what ended up happening with that? And then what was next for you?
Yeah. So involved with Elongate that was around February, March of last year, and then ended up leaving. So that was 2021, and then ended up leaving around February of this year. It was such an amazing, rewarding project. But for me, frankly, I was getting some amazing offers from some really cool law firms. And I was like, is this what I want to do? Or do I want to go practice law for a bit? And then the big pivot happened, which was my current co-founder, Daryl, sat me down and said, hey man, I just want some advice. I've got this friend, Alan Richson. He's the current Jack Reacher. We've been chatting about a new movie he wants to do, and I want to bring an idea to him about doing a community raise from the blockchain. He's like, you've done this before. Practically, what does it look like? And then also, aren't there a lot of legal implications in place? And my focus in law school has been in particular in securities regulation, in corporate governance, in VC law, and all those sorts of things that are tangential to the Web3 space. I was like, hey man, let's just chat about it. Let's talk through sort of, my experience at my last project, what the build looks like, what our outside counsel has advised us on, the things I've learned. And 3 hours later, we thought, why don't we just build a platform to empower artists to fund their next big films and TV shows and bring a community in so that fans can be a part of the process from the beginning. And so I ended up leaving my last project, hopping over to join Kino, which Daryl and I co-founded back in February. It wasn't like I left one for the other, is that I had left and was going to go take this law firm job, and I'd accepted an offer there. And then I moved over to Kino and had to end up calling my boss, or future boss at the law firm, and saying, hey man, am I crazy? I want to go found this project. I think it's going to do a lot of good in the world. But should I just, double down on this law firm thing? And actually his advice was like, go do it. This is the time. There's so much innovation happening. Either you're going to win big and you're going to change the world through your company, or you're going to fail big and you're going to learn a whole heck of a lot, and you can come back and always work at a firm. That's always something you can do in the future. That's always advice that I give to people too, is, if you want to go start something, go try. There's no failure in trying. There are always other opportunities. There's always that corporate desk job, but I won't ramble too much about that.
Well, your future ex-boss, was a really cool guy.
yeah, really.
Because otherwise, that doesn't come across too often, especially I feel like with the stigma that the law industry has in the first place. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Also, he happens to be probably the number one lawyer in all of crypto. One of my biggest role models. Amazing guy. In fact, it was one of those moments where I was like, this was too cool. I don't think I want to leave now. So
That's awesome. So, so it's really cool to have an overview of Kino and then also talk a little bit about Elongate.
Yeah.
But tell us, so with these projects, and it's pretty transparent how you said 5% goes to charities, 5% kind of goes to us. What's the business model behind projects like Kino or others? Like, how do you make, like, are these projects or are these businesses, and how do you view that?
It's a great question. So I think some, at the end of the day, especially if you look at the DAO space now, they're projects, they're communities, they're clubs. Some of them are basically charitable organizations where the goal is not profit, the goal is not revenue, the goal is not necessarily to facilitate some sort of balance sheet and you have a CFO and you have a formal structure. At Elongate, we're a bit of a hybrid. So we started very much as a project, and then we started implementing some serious business models, and we started developing and innovating some really cool tech around how do we keep facilitating a token. And what's cool about the token model, which, to be clear, Kino is not a token model, we're a marketplace model, and I'll kind of get into the differences. But the token model is we start and we bring the community in from the start, and they get to be sort of, part of the process from the very beginning because they bought into the token at the very beginning. Instead of like a traditional model is, we go raise from VC and that's how we get capital in, and then we bring in consumers later and they're kind of removed, right? They buy products, they buy services, they're fans, that sort of thing. So this was a more close way to have your community involved at the very beginning. They have a very loud voice in sort of the direction of what you're doing. And so it really is a new look at, and I'll try not to throw too many legal terms around, but what I get excited about is it's a new look at corporate governance and stakeholder theory. It's, we have a whole group of people that care about what we're doing and have invested in what we're doing, and they actually have an active voice in it. And it's not just that they showed up to our, quarterly meeting and raised their hand on, some sort of digital, remote meeting and tried to ask a question that, the CEO of the company is never going to care about. It's like we're all in Discord together and somebody said, hey, why don't we donate to this charity project? And we all sat around and we made a decision and we moved forward. So that's the token model, which is very innately and intimately involved with, your consumer at the start. A bit of a different model is the marketplace model, which is what we're pursuing at Kino. And that's how we do this on scale over and over and over again. Is that for each one of our film and TV projects, they release a collection of NFTs that gives the holder of that certain unique perks, certain unique rights. And so for us, it's 3 different kinds. You can invest in a film or TV show. That's our investment NFTs. It gives you the right to profit participation in the future. So much like a traditional investment in a startup, this is just investing in film and TV. So when that film and TV project gets acquired by a big studio, a big streamer, you get to participate in that profit, right? There's also experience NFTs, kind of like tickets, like Coachella, like I mentioned before. You could buy an epic ticket to the red carpet premiere of the next big movie with your favorite star, and you could go to the theater here in Los Angeles with them and be part of that event. You just bought that ticket 2 years early, right? Instead of buying it right before the event, because you knew that buying it now is also going to help that artist make their movie, and then you get to celebrate with them at the end. Or the last thing is collectibles, which we see all the time in NFTs, which is you can buy some digital art. And for us, it's like related to the film. So it's IP that's actually out there and it's not new. It's it is new to the world, but it's based off of a story that's going to be all over in the future. Or you could buy the right to a prop, for example. So the example I like to give is American Psycho is one of my favorite movies. And ironically, I have it over here, but there's a business card scene that's one of my favorite scenes. And it's like, if I could have bought it back then, I would have probably held it, but that would be worth a lot today, first of all. And second, it would be such a cool piece of that film to have in film history. We're enabling people to buy the right to that before the movie's shot, and then it gets shipped to them afterwards, right? And so what happens then is all of those people buy NFTs, and there are different kinds of NFT holders and buyers and consumers. They all are part of that community for that movie, so let's call it Los Angeles on Fire. Classic blockbuster, right? You guys are all part of now the Los Angeles on Fire community. You're all stakeholders in that. And for 2 years, you get to be part of the process. But by being a consumer in different ways, an investor, a collector, an experience seeker, you're empowering an artist to go make their art, to go make their film or TV show in a way that they would have had to go into the traditional finance and studio system, which traditionally gives them less ownership, less power, less control over their art. Instead, it's the power of the people to enable the artist to go make the next big thing and also the fans get a front row seat to the whole thing. So it's sort of this win-win economic scenario for everyone, which I think is really cool. And again, that's not possible without this amazing social plus financial revolution that we're seeing with Web3.
Yeah, that's the exact question I was just going to ask. Is why now, and why do you need Web3 to build Kino? Like, what is it about Web3 where it allows something like Kino to exist?
Yeah, definitely. A couple things. I think, a few years ago, the public wasn't quite ready for blockchain. And I don't think blockchain really was even Web3 back then. Communities were starting to form, but it was very much, I love this coin and I'm going to tell everybody about it. It wasn't as much a project and movement based sort of space. That has shifted so much, especially in the past 2 years. We've seen this shift to that community-based economics. And you've seen that shift even further from beyond coins and tokens to NFTs, and how that's taken in different shapes in the digital space, and how now it's not just a token that I can see on a ledger. It's a token with a piece of artwork attached that I can put in different places, and I can signal to other people like, hey, I'm a part of this thing. And so I think that those evolutions have changed the market, and also a lot more people have heard about it. My favorite channel to watch in the finance space is Bloomberg TV. I promise I'm not sponsored by them. I just think that they're really cool because they talk about crypto nonstop, and they'll ask the tops of the top of traditional finance, what do you think about it? And I have seen so many more people today go, oh yeah, that's the next big thing. And in fact, I was watching the CEO of Franklin Templeton the other day, very traditional finance institution, was saying Bitcoin's a distraction, Ethereum's a distraction. Those are just individual technology pieces. It's the technology itself, blockchain, that is going to create the next big disruption in finance. And I think that's really cool to see in front of our eyes, people adopting, people believing. It's that bell curve of adoption, right? We're going from those early believers to that next stage of those people that are adopting. And I think that's why it's now for the timing. But for the technology piece itself, if we're going to be serious about sort of facilitating accessibility and facilitating equitability, blockchain is the technology to do it, because it quite literally enshrines rights on a transparent ledger that everyone can see, everyone can fact check. So if I own the right to a share of this film or TV show, that is public, that is accessible, right? Like, we have so many legal systems in place which have been thought through by the most brilliant minds of all time, and they are so inaccessible, right? Like, even for the example I give, what's really cool, I was chatting at ETH Barcelona with a couple friends who are doing some cool things in the music space and IP protection on the blockchain. There is a whole system in place to protect IP, but I guarantee hardly any of us have ever been to the database to check IP rights, because the websites are built on technology, I think, that was created in the 90s, And so it's just, blockchain is enabling now a more efficient, effective, and accessible system for us all to be involved in what were previously highly gate-kept, highly centralized systems. And so that's why I think, on a technological level, that's why Kino needs blockchain, because it's just better technology. Sure, we could have built this all with databases in a very Web 2 manner, but that wouldn't have added those extra layers of accessibility and equitability that I think are so crucial for the next era of technology and finance.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So Kino itself is really cool. It's basically, like, if I were to have a metaphor for this, it's basically kind of like a Kickstarter for movies, but instead of just getting early access to a movie, you're actually getting ownership, which might mean revenue share, profit share, and you might be getting access to red carpet events, maybe access to props, like you said. Is that a fair analogy?
Yeah, no, that's perfect. The only thing we like to say, though, is we aren't crowdfunding. So we work really hard to make sure that every one of our projects has alternative financing in place. These things are going to get made whether you are involved or not. And I think that is really important too. And that's also been enabled by these more complex and yet more accessible and equitable models, is that we can say, hey, this movie was going to get funded by this big traditional film fund, but instead they're deciding to do sort of an if then. We could go get the money from them, and we know that's our backup plan, but instead we're going to bring the public in, because we know that bringing fans into our community is actually just better for us as artists. Like, especially if you think about it, when all the big streamers now are clamoring for new content, what are they going to want to pick up? Well, they're going to want to pick up something with a set fan base that didn't just like the project, they put thousands of dollars into it, right? And so I think that's what's cool about where we're at right now, is that we can enable this fan loyalty generation. We can enable this capital aggregation to fund things without it being I hope we hit the top of the thermometer so this happens. And I also, here's a sweatshirt for your support, right? And so, like you said, it's not this donative, it's not this Kickstarter crowdfunding model. It's an iteration on that, and I have nothing against crowdfunding platforms. I think they're amazing and that they had a serious step in history. But I think it's like Web3 gives us the ability to go beyond that and say, no, you're an owner. And we're able to facilitate that through very cool tech, through really innovative legal and economic systems. You can be a part of it. Come on in,
So to give us a scale of like how important or how transformative Kino can be to these artists and creators, how do you think it is going to be a blend of Kino and traditional financing, or do you think this can, or like where is it going to start and where do you see it going? And if you could put like a dollar figures behind that too, just so that we can understand, that'd be really cool too.
I mean, I think the first dollar figure to set as baseline is the film and TV industry right now is worth about $221 billion, which is a huge number. And by 2030, it's supposed to grow to over 450 billion. And to also put some further context, I mean, we can look at some of the recent mergers and acquisitions in the space. Warner and Discovery just merged. Amazon is currently merging with MGM. We're seeing such high centralization of all of these different platforms, streamers, tech plus film, right? And what that means is that the centralization is actually keeping out the ability for more art to be made. And I know I'm diverting from the question a little bit, but I'll get back to it, I promise. There's a couple other numbers that are crucial to know, is that 98% of film and TV projects that could be made don't get made. So that means 2% are making up that 221 billion. So that's huge. I mean, there's still a lot being made. I'm not saying that film and TV isn't a big space, it is. But of that 2%, only about a quarter of those things ever actually see the light of day, get put in movie theaters, on streaming platforms, on VOD, etc. And so what that means is that 98%, and even of that 2% that got money in the bank and they made it, but they never saw actual distribution, is what we call it. That means there's so much art that's being, thought of, that's being created out there that could be funded, that could be made. There are so many more amazing stories that could change the world. And so I think that when we open up, right, like I'm not saying that we're going to see 100x on that 221 billion or that 450 billion, but to get a sense of the scale there, we could be looking at a multi-trillion-dollar industry because the whole world now is able to fund more storytelling. And at the end of the day, we believe at Kino that storytelling is the way that social impact occurs. That, all of us live in different parts of the world, and we might not fully understand or be able to empathize with somebody that comes from a very different background and a very different place. When you can watch a story about somebody that had a very different experience from you, it's a lot easier to build some empathy, and it's a lot easier for us to then understand one another and actually get along better and actually start taking care of one another. And so that's our big vision, is that we're going to open up that 98%. We're going to be able to bring capital to the artists who want to tell some amazing stories. And then on scale, we're going to be able to facilitate billions of dollars worth of film and TV shows just via our platform. I mean, we're starting with 10 projects that are set to start launching at the end of the year. Our goal is to have 25 to 50 in year 2. Our goal is to hit 50 to 100 in the next year. And those numbers do start to add up very fast. That turns into hundreds of millions to billions of dollars that we're able to access when previously it was in this very much gatekept space. And that's so empowering. To say to the world that, hey, you might work in, development, right? And you might think that I have nothing to do with film and TV, but I love, sci-fi. That's my thing. And I have a little bit extra capital that I might have put in the stock market, but hey, instead I'm going to go invest in that film or TV show, or I'm going to buy that particular prop, or I'm going to just go to this event because, hey, I'm going to treat myself and do the most cool experience I've ever had. And I also know that I'm now empowering artists as well. And I think that's so cool.
Love it. So a good way to think about Web3 and blockchain is a lot of times these projects just eliminate a middleman. And it seems like the middleman in your world might be the studios. Is the goal to eliminate the need for a studio, or are you saying, hey, studios, come along with us, where we are the future?
Yeah. It really is a come along sort of model. If you think about the different kinds of film and TV that's made, they're all different levels. You can make a movie for 500,000, you can make a movie for 500 million, which the last Fast and Furious, I think, is hitting that budget level, which is insane to think about. At those higher levels, that's a lot of money. And I think that probably we're going to need some really big entities to be able to aggregate that amount of capital. I'm not sure that we're ever going to have, and maybe we will, who knows as we go to the future. But I think that studios can also offer a very particular kind of system where a very particular kind of film is made. But I think that what they can also do in a world where we both exist is like we can handle the finance and the community aspects at the start. We can get the first money in so that these movies get and TV shows get made, and we can get fans excited from the very beginning. And then the big streamers can come along and distribute. And they actually just benefited because instead of going and buying 100 projects at script phase and not knowing if they're ever going to take off, so I just spent basically, let's say 100 and each was for $1 million. I spent $100 million on 100 different projects, hoping that one of them takes off. Instead, I could save that 100 million. I can maybe go buy 5 at 10 million each, and each of those 5 had a set fan base that actually upped my subscriber base. Now, as a streamer, I'm happy because I just bought 5 projects that I know have a loyal following, and I was able to save 50 million on my balance sheet because instead I didn't just sort of take this sort of let's pray and hope that one of these takes off model. I was very purposeful in saying, hey, you take the risk up front by engaging with fan bases and bringing in money. We'll come in later because our job is to distribute. And so I think that there is a room for both, is that we bring in communities and finance at the beginning, the distributors come in and they do what they do best, which is bringing them to the world. And I think that's a pretty cool system that could exist because then we're all specializing in the areas that we can, do best.
As a community member, how do I know that I want to be involved? So like you mentioned, I guess most of us don't know how movies are made. So you mentioned script phase for studios. What is the phase like? Are people pitching movies to me as a community member and I decide to invest, or talk us through how that works?
Yeah. So not exactly. We're not expecting the world to all of a sudden become, go get their MFAs and understand how film and TV works. And frankly, like that's not my expertise either. My co-founder, Daryl, is an executive producer. He's written a show. They sold to Netflix with Matt Damon. He wrote a show with Jimmy Kimmel and sold it to ABC. He's the expert. And so at the end of the day, I defer to him in all things film and TV there. I'm the Web3 law economics guy. But what I think is important is that just like your investor in anything, we can do our research and sort of decide what we think is worth putting our money into. And that's the level of sort of notice, to use a legal term, or information that we're going to be providing on Kino. Is at the very beginning, we are curating a set amount of projects that we have put through our particular quality control layer, saying, hey, because of the level of expertise that Daryl and his network of others in the space have, this has passed a certain check that we think that this has the opportunity to become a very successful project on sort of the economic side of things. But also on the storytelling side, we think this is something that the world should see. And that's something we are going to continue to decentralize, is bring in a wider community of experts from the space who can have more votes, who can determine what that sort of programming is. Because at the end of the day, we don't want to become a studio, but we also don't want to have a world in which anybody can throw up, a video and pretend like it's going to be the next big blockbuster, right? Like we do have to protect consumers and users on our platform, but we want to make sure that at the very beginning, when you hop up into our, NFT marketplaces, you're able to see, hey, what's this movie going to be about? Maybe there's going to be what we call a sizzle reel, which is kind of like a trailer at the very beginning to sort of tell you what the movie will be. But it's not quite a trailer because it hasn't been shot yet, obviously. Maybe you get to read some excerpts from the script. You get to see who's attached. You get to see the directors, the writers, the actors, the filmmakers. And much like in the startup space, a lot of it's around the people. The biggest thing that we hear from VCs all the time is we invest in founders because we believe that you're the ones who are going to make this something in the world. It's very similar in film and TV. If you're going to partner with, my favorite filmmaker is David Lynch. I love Twin Peaks, the TV show. I would invest in anything David Lynch does because I think it's amazing. Now, that's not a guarantee that it's going to go and be the next blockbuster hit, but it is somebody that I want to support. I think has a really great track record and has a chance of making something that's really cool and that the world should see. It's going to be similar on our platform. It's going to be very heavily on the people at the very beginning. But of course, the fans are going to be able to see, what's this about? What's the genre? What are all the particular details? What's the budget like? What's the cast and crew need to look like? What's the timeline for production? All of that is the information that, of course, we need to make sure everybody has, because similar to traditional investing, it's important that so you can make that decision about this is something I want to throw my weight behind or it's not.
So on the topic of community and people, and we've talked a lot about the digital the Discords, the everything. And so it seems like one of the unique pieces and like value propositions about Kino is that there's also the in real life aspect of it.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty unique because all these projects tend to be, they happen somewhere else and you hear about them and see updates. But so tell us about like why you've chosen to do both the digital and in person, how that, differentiates you guys. And also how do you maintain that cohesion between the two, because so that they don't become two totally separate communities as well?
Absolutely. I think there's some really cool things developing in that space too, which I'll dive into. But I think the first thing is that, we are still humans. We do still do life in person, and sometimes the most amazing experiences we have are in person. And I don't think that's going to go anywhere. I do think that this development of the metaverse, I think that our recent experience through the pandemic with remote capacity, like we wouldn't really be doing this podcast right now because I'm in LA, and you're in Denver, you guys are across the world, it's not that far, but, to have me hop on a flight probably would have been a little bit unreasonable on a Wednesday morning. So it's cool that remote has enabled us to do a lot of things. And that's also what's enabled us to be able to generate these communities, because the cast and crew can hop in and give a weekly update remotely, right? And that's able to have that connection. But the in-person goes a step further, and it adds that extra layer of like, oh, I'm actually a part of this. And so I think that as we grow, we're going to be looking towards how do we facilitate both a really good in-person strategy, realizing that people live all over the world and that travel is by no means necessarily cheap. But if you look at film, they've been doing this for a while. You'll see film premieres in LA, in New York, in Paris. When I was just in Paris, there was I walked by the premiere of Bullet Train that just came out recently, and I walked by and I was like, oh my gosh, wow, it's right here. Film's been doing this for a while, right? You go to the people, you premiere, you get a lot of people involved, you generate hype locally. And that's definitely part of our model, is to expand and be able to have that global presence where we're able to activate people where they are. But then also realizing that, first of all, not everybody wants to come and do in-person things, and that's totally cool. And second, some people might not have the resources. Some people just might have zero interest or capacity on that week to do that. But they're like, I would love to hop in a metaverse and hang out with some people. And we're excited to start building digital space around that go beyond the Discord. You could actually hop into a metaverse, walk around in a themed space that looks like the future movie, and get to sit in a let's say it's a grassy knoll, or if it's the Los Angeles on fire, it might be sitting in downtown LA in the metaverse with the cast and crew, and they're giving you a virtual update, but it feels almost like you're there. So I think that we're going to see expansions on what IRL means and what the digital means, but also realizing that we all have different metrics for what experience is and for what community is. And I want to make sure that we hit those different elements and offer those, because at the end of the day, we want it to be tangible, even if it is digital or physical as an option, adds that certain level of sort of credibility to the experience.
You've mentioned that you have 10 films premiering this fall. So you're a fairly new company. I think you started in February or something. Tell us what you can about that launch.
Yeah. I gave the caveat before this that unfortunately we still live in a world where there are contracts in place and we can't announce much yet. And this is a testament to my co-founder, who I said is an absolute awesome human. And he has a great network of some really talented artists. I mean, I'm excited to announce when we can, because these are names that people will know
awesome.
of, people that you will have heard of, people that you will have seen on billboards around and on TV and on the big screen. And it's not going to all happen at once. So we're not going to be launching all 10 in one day. It's going to be over the next year. And it's not going to be like a premiere where we're all going to show up in a movie theater and watch the movie. It hasn't been made yet, right? And that's a whole new model too that we think is really cool, is we get to learn as we grow, what is it that brings early supporters or fans or whatever you want to call them into the process at the beginning point. We know that names are going to be huge. We've done market testing, and it's like, if I know this actor is a part of it, I'm definitely going to support it. But there are other elements to it as well. The kind of genre that it's in. People tend to sort of, gravitate towards different genres. I might really want to support a new romantic comedy because that's my thing. And I might not really know the actor, but I do like this idea. I watched the sizzle, I read a bit of the script, and I liked what this was. That might be part of it. And so we're going to start on our platform getting feedback from the public as well. Is something that one of our internal models at Kino is we get feedback fast, early, and often, because at the end of the day, we are building something new. And it's important for us to realize that while we have all these amazing ideas, and I have an amazing team that is working day in and day out to create the best experiences in this new model, we also need to figure it out along the way too. And so I'm excited for every month over, probably starting in November, we're still working on the final date for the announcement and the launch. We're going to be launching a new project, and we're going to be iterating constantly and getting feedback from those early communities around how do we continue to bring you into the process? How do we continue to build that community around each one of these? And frankly, how do we get here? It's my co-founder and sort of our tenacity. We both very much come from a place of, this is what we want to do with our lives. We want to disrupt Hollywood for the better, and we want to do it at the highest level, so that way people take us seriously. Because I think that's the other thing that Web3 is struggling with right now is you see a lot of projects. I have a lot of founder friends who have founded some amazingly brilliant things, but they're not getting necessarily the traction that they should, because there's still a lot of people out there who like the old systems and want to keep them as they are, or they're just like, I don't know about that, right? But our approach is, if we can start with some big names and we can make some big headlines, and we have our tech in a really solid place, and we have our legal aspects in a really solid place, and our economics are new and sort of unmatched in the space, that's how we're going to really enact some cool change in what is a very visible environment. So I hope this has spillover effects into other areas of Web3, that people are like, oh yeah, I bought my first NFT on a Kino project, I'm totally going to go buy one on Royal to invest in artists, or I'm totally going to go buy that new piece of digital art because I feel comfortable with this now. That's my goal too, is I hope that we benefit Web3 in general.
Totally. So when you say launching 10 movies, that doesn't mean the 10 movies are made. You're launching
exactly.
You're launching the funding to the community to participate in those 10 projects.
Absolutely.
Got it.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. We need a new word for
I was like,
launch.
There's no way they're launching 10 movies this fall.
No. I mean, that would be amazing. I don't think there's any producer under the sun that could produce something that quickly and get it out. But
so let's say come November, whatever, and you announce this project. What does that look like as a community member? How can I get involved specifically? Like, what could that look like?
Definitely. So there's a couple different means. We're going to start opening our Discord in the next couple of weeks. And so if you want to get involved, you can hop in the Discord and hang out. It's going to be a little slow to start because we are really heavily building as a team, focusing on our platform build. We're focusing on finalizing all the details of the projects, making sure that the launch is going to be a hugely successful one. There's another way that people can get involved early and get a sort of extra skin in the game, which is our founding membership NFT collection. It's for our earliest believers. It gives you pre-sale access for as long as you hold the NFT. So if you hold it, you get to get in before everybody else, which I think is pretty cool, because if you're a super fan of a particular artist, you might want to get in there before things sell out. Or if you're a trader, you might want to get in there and buy something before other people do, so that you could resell it in the open market. Whatever's your game, you play it. That's not up to us. But the other cool features are, you get an invite to our yearly film festival that we're hosting. We're hosting our first quote unquote film festival to celebrate our projects in December. And so if you hold the NFT, you get to actually come in person. So again, it's that combo of that digital and IRL. You're also part of an exclusive founding member community where you get to hear about the projects before everybody else. And then the artwork itself has been made. It was finalized this past week by an Emmy-nominated art director, Corey Heinzen, who did Megamind, Shrek, Madagascar. So that is one way to get in more tangibly right now. But also just follow the projects, and we'll give updates. And then once things launch, you have the ability to hop on the platform, and our goal is to make the transacting experience as seamless as possible. Like, I want my mom to be able to hop on in a couple months and buy an NFT of our first project, and all she did was swipe her credit card, and she hopped into a chat, and she was like, wow, this is awesome. Because I think that's the other thing that Web3 is struggling with right now, is it's super inaccessible technologically, and that's okay. It's new, and it's it's nascent, it's emerging, and we'll get there. But our team is very purposeful about ensuring that if you've got a ton of Ethereum and your thing is Ethereum, you can buy traditionally, and you're going to have that opportunity. That if you're like, I don't even know what NFT stands for, you're going to be able to hop on, and you're going to say, hey, I believe in this movie. I've got a credit card here. I'm going to buy, and that's it. It's easy.
Yep. You mentioned something in there that I think a lot of people don't necessarily, this is like the hard part to conceptualize with Web3, is the resale. So you said if you're a reseller or a flipper, you could buy these things and resell it. So explain how, what that world could look like. So could I become a founding member and send 1 ETH to this address on your website? and I could go resell that to Thomas in a year, and then all of a sudden he's a founding member, even though he wasn't.
Yeah, and that's what's interesting about the new model. I mean, yeah, you 100% could. And to be very clear, what's on the site right now is our pre-mint. So we will be launching the first page of the platform, which will be for our founding membership, where you can mint directly. This was our quote unquote stealth mode. We haven't done any marketing yet. We've only put things on our Instagram. This was our way for our people that have heard about us early, our friends, family, folks we met on podcasts, folks that we met at conferences in Europe, to get in early before we do our public launch. But sure, yeah, you could go buy it now and resell it. I think that's what's really cool in this membership model. That's a whole nother space in NFTs that I didn't even get to before, which is this idea that like you don't have to pay a yearly membership to be a part of a community, a club, whatever you want to call it. You could join now. We say like you can hop on the train this year, you could hop off the train next year and pass it along to the next person, and the cool thing is you could theoretically make some money off of that. Can't promise anything at the end of the day, especially coming from the space I do, but it's like, maybe you do, maybe that thing doubles in value next year and you go make some money. Maybe it doesn't, maybe you sell it at cost, or maybe you just sell it and you didn't make any money on it, but you were like, I don't want this anymore. I had my fun in the film space, but now Thomas wants it. I'm going to resell this to him, and he becomes a founding member, and he gets all the perks. And to use the sort of the economic and legal term, transferability is what that is, and that's really cool because instead of you just going and buying a membership to your gym, and really all that is you put money in, and they put a yes in the database that Sean is now a member of, local LA gym. Instead, it's this like living thing that you can pass from person to person. You have ownership of, and you're able to actually determine what you do with it, which I think also builds more community as well, is this idea that humans are the ones determining sort of who's a part of what. Yeah.
I love I don't know if it's the right analogy, but it's almost akin to right now the Web 2 world of us having a membership to a gym is kind of like renting. Yes. And then Web3 of actually having this NFT, having this membership that's actually that with the transferability is essentially home ownership now.
Yes. Yeah.
So, and is that part of is that part of Kino's business model then? Is that like how you make, because I've got to imagine that if you offer benefits in a membership like that, does take capital to keep it ongoing. So that you have, if you had 1,000 people that just like never did anything with it, that'd be difficult from an economic standpoint to keep it,
No,
going.
Definitely. And that's what's interesting too. I think a lot of NFT communities are exploring is how do these new business models evolve? I mean, that surely is part of it, is factoring in that there will likely be exchanging of NFTs, and there's a fee that's baked into that, which is standard in the market. And that's how we generate extra revenue, is when that changes hands, we get a fee off that transaction. But I think that is actually a perfect metaphor for what this is instead of sort of me renting from you and I got no ownership of it, I had no property rights over it, which is what we call the bundle of sticks in law school. I could only do a certain number of things with it because that's what my rent agreement said, right? It is that ownership. I own the bundle of sticks. I can do whatever I want with it, and that could be reselling to somebody else. Some cool things. I was actually chatting about this with my co-founder this morning. You could actually rent out that that founding membership to somebody else for a month,
like a mini landlord. Almost.
Exactly. I don't want it right now. I'm going to rent it to you for a month because I'm going to go to Alaska and go off the grid for 3 months. But hey, do you want to go to a couple of movie premieres? You can have the founding membership pass now for 3 months, right? That I think is really cool, and we're starting to see that emerge in this space. I think that when it comes to like just artwork, people are kind of confused, like, why would I rent a piece of art for 3 months? I mean, I think that is going to take off more because that's totally a thing that happens in the actual, old world art space. But when it comes to this, like NFTs with more utility, it makes more sense. It's like, oh yeah, I totally would love to like have that pass for 3 months so I could go hang out in the film space, but I don't want to own it. I just want to do a couple cool things for a cheaper price and then move on with my life, right?
So what is you said a good way to make side revenue would be through these resales. What is the main business model?
Yeah.
I think it's hard to conceptualize where you guys, and maybe you haven't figured this out totally, but I'd be interested how you're thinking about it.
Yeah. So we charge fees on platform. So just like any other exchange, that's where we make our money, is anytime a consumer buy something on our platform, there is going to be a fee, because we are the one that are facilitating the community. We're the one that's bringing the NFT to the market. We're the one that puts the lights on for the technology, to use sort of a primitive term. But at the end of the day, what's cool about that is that we aren't like a traditional studio system, putting up the capital and then taking the majority ownership. Instead, we say to the artists, you get to keep your majority ownership. The way we make our money is by transacting with our consumers and by facilitating this amazing experience, by bringing this to a whole group of people that previously didn't have access. And we just make our money because people are doing things on the platform, just like Coinbase does, just like OpenSeas, just like anybody else.
So Web3 is absolutely going to be disruptive to businesses. And we just talked about it, how like Kino's definitely going to disrupt some traditional financing and some traditional studios. But at the same time, and Sean kind of alluded to this earlier, these like middle intermediary players here are also going to benefit from the de-risking of it. So what would you say to other businesses that may or may not be in just the video kind of production space here, of like how are they going to be affected by Web3 and or what would you tell them to think about? Because I think it's a different mindset that they need to adopt here, but because in this case, the studios are actually, they're going to lose out here, but they're going to gain over there. So how would other businesses think about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's in more the traditional finance sense. I mean, look to where there are areas that you could de-risk by actually empowering your consumers to be part of the process. And while there are some elements that you might feel like you give up, like for example, with the founding membership NFT, if you have full ownership, that then means that I couldn't charge you, $100 a year, right? Like I might do traditionally in the Web2 space. And so there is a shift in the business model. There's also a shift, in a sense, to the control and to a bit of the power structure. But I don't think that should be scary by any means. I think, in fact, that should be sort of mandated by us as the people. Is there is a future in which we all can be a part of the conversation and make really cool things. So I would say look to elements of de-risking. There is a trade-off, but I think that it actually benefits businesses greatly. I mean, that Franklin Templeton interview with the CEO, she talked about actually like an idea for the San Francisco Giants. Instead of doing a loyalty program by just giving out like buy one get one free cards, why don't you just release an NFT where you have like a super fan club where they actually own 1% of the team, so you have to give up a little bit of ownership, but you just brought in revenue and you have recurring revenue through any resales, and you have this super loyal fan base now that those are going to be the most epic people that are your champions. And that's one of the big things that's crucial to Kino in our space. What I learned at Elongate was that like our biggest champions were our community. I can hop in a Discord, I can hop on podcasts, I can hop on things all day long and talk about a project. But the people that really care and they're going to do the work on scale is people in your communities. And so for our film and TV projects, we have a bunch of super fans that are now going to go all over social media and talk about it. And so for all the big streamers, it's like, yeah, I want a piece of that, right? And so that was actually just a better experience for everybody. And it was better for the artists because now they knew that they had a more valuable piece of art because they had thousands of people who also wanted to make sure that that thing got acquired by the big streamers, right? I think that a lot of business models can take a look at this and say, not only does this help our bottom line, but it actually helps our growth and our scale.
Fast forward maybe 5 years, what does success look like for you guys, and kind of paint the picture of what a successful world with Kino looks like?
Yeah, I love that question. Definitely it's over 250 projects in 1 year that we've launched. It's definitely a world in which artists say, yeah, I want to go see if I can launch with Kino first, because I know that I'm going to be protected and I'm going to be empowered like I haven't been previously. It's also a world in which we are able to start to support younger emerging artists who have been previously, it's really, really hard to break into this industry. People are not supported in the ways that they could be. And so we want to start generating some programs around supporting young artists, whether it's through MFA programs and grants, whether it's through, and this is going to be part of the future plans, is a community that does both IRL and digital of actual artists who might be new to this space, but say, hey, I need some resources and help. I would love somebody to edit my scripts. I'd love to get connected to a good entertainment lawyer. I would love to get connected with a producer so I can sort of figure out what all I need to do to put together a budget and actually maybe launch a future project on Kino. And what's cool is that we hope that once we have physical locations anybody that's part of that artist community can come hang out at our sort of different, offices, kind of like in a co-working world. And there's real community in person too. And just by us actually being together and collaborating, we're all going to build off each other's successes. And I think that's something that's really cool about Web3 is the focus is on collaborative success. It's not focused on individualized success. Like I can't tell you how different I've noticed when I go to tech events in Web3 and I speak to other founders. It's never, what are you doing? Because I want to make sure that that's not going to hurt me. It's what are you doing? Because I could help you. And also I'm going to make an ass, but like we can support each other. And I think that we can bring that to the Hollywood space too. If we can generate not just this amazing fan community that is now a set base where projects can launch off of, right? We also have an artist community that is supporting one another and that we can now be a resource to and say, hey, we're not going to come and make this thing for you. But if you need some help, you can come hang out at our offices. You can be in our online chat. You can get all the necessary sort of Kickstarter things that you need. I don't use that in sort of the tech term. I use that just sort of in like literal kickstart your project to get going. I think that's going to be a really cool future. The other thing that Daryl and I talk about, my co-founder, is I would love to see a Kino project win an Oscar, win an Emmy, win a Golden Globe. That would be a huge.
That'd be dope. Oh my god, that'd be so cool. It kind of reminds me of like when the first Netflix movie won, and it was like so weird that like Bezos was in the audience for Amazon Prime.
I know. Well, but then think about it too. For us, like that's not a win for Kino alone. That's a win for thousands of people who now can sit at home. Like I get chills thinking about like if my best friend or my mom was, a holder of an NFT in a project that won an Oscar, how so epic would that be sitting at home and that wins? Like, I think I would cry. I'd be like, I did that, and I want to make sure that people feel that. It's like, I was a part of that. We just won something amazing. The whole world heard the story because we were part of this from the beginning.
And you can even mint an Oscar NFT for those holders too. You can airdrop it right to them. That'd be so cool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and they can put that everywhere. Man. They can brag about that all over
Love
the place.
It. Right? If listeners want to find out more about Kino or get involved, talk about where they can go and what types of things they can get involved in currently.
Yeah. So our website is KinoApp.xyz. So KinoApp.xyz. Be careful if you type that on Apple, it will keep changing it to CUZ. I don't know why. That's not really a word either, but Apple autocorrect does weird things. So KinoApp.xyz is our website, which is currently going through some updates. Like I said, we were in stealth mode before, so you're going to see some new front pages to the website, which I'm excited about. And then the first sort of spaces on the platform are going to be coming out in the next couple of weeks. You can also follow us at KinoApp.xyz on Instagram, at KinoApp.xyz on Twitter. And then also, if you want to find our Discord information, that's also on the website and across our socials.
Great. Well, Austin, thanks so much for being on the show. This was great.
Thank you. This is really fun, guys. I appreciate it.